Welcome to the Idaho Main Street Podcast, where we talk about the issues that matter to you. Welcome to the Idaho Main Street Podcast. We're here with the 33rd governor of the great state of Idaho, none other than Governor Brad Little. Governor, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us in your beautiful office here.
No, we just we're putting the state Christmas tree in today and getting in the season, and we'll turn the lights on Tuesday.
Oh, perfect. Well, you're all ready.
Oh, well, the state capitol's ready. I'm not ready, but the state capitol's ready.
Nick, real question. Does Teresa have her Christmas tree up yet?
There was a conversation about that. Matter of fact, I think maybe one of our sons perhaps bought multiple Christmas trees at a fundraiser, and so I think we have multiple Christmas trees.
They're going up. So I've got to ask, when you go to these meetings with governors from all over the country, do you ever feel a little guilty hearing about all their problems and knowing how good we have it here in Idaho?
That's a great question. I just once would like to have governors say, oh, and I'm almost on the verge, don't come to our state. It's not, when everybody says we're number one, I go, I don't think so. I think we are, but I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah, keep it quiet.
We got enough people moving in that it's kind of, but there is great value in talking to other governors about, we always take notes about what we can steal from other governors, and that's part of the process. But it will be very interesting when we go in February to the national meeting about the huge changes in cabinet positions and agencies, and it's kind of an exciting time. I was one of the only governors there that wasn't looking for a job, so there are a lot of governors looking for jobs, but I couldn't be happier about Interior with Governor Burgum, who's a real good friend of mine, and the things he's going to do for both Interior and also energy. So we're excited about that's going to be great opportunities for Idaho.
Yeah, a lot of your colleagues that got promotions, if that's what you want to consider it. You, I think, won out because you got to stay. You don't have to go live in D.C.
There's a tentativeness that in 2 years, generally, if you just look at it statistically, the party in power on the off year historically doesn't do very well. So the Trump administration, rightly so, is going to hit the ground running hard on the very first day. I put out something this weekend. I know this is a record for having all the cabinet appointments determined by the 22nd, first time that's ever happened. So they fully recognize that 8 years ago they didn't start fast enough, but that's not going to be a problem this time.
Yeah, I just wonder how those newsrooms keep their heads straight when every 5 minutes it was another appointment coming through and everyone's heads were spinning.
There was great interest in a lot of the cabinet appointments. So, but we're the one appointment that they haven't made, but I think it's going to be somebody that we know pretty well is who's in charge of intergovernmental affairs, because that's who we dialogue with at the White House. And the other thing that they're doing different, and Governor Burgum was telling me that the Energy, EPA, and Interior, that the designatees are vetting the deputy secretaries in the other departments. So there'll be more harmony at that level, which is really a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So
speaking of great interest, something big's happening here. The Western adage that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting was a little too true this year, but the fighting's over. And this is a great opportunity to kind of celebrate the good stuff that's happening. What's this experience been like this last year? Is you've led a state when Idahoans have faced the very real challenge and triumph of managing water in the state.
Well, in 2015 and 16, when we put the last agreement together, as time went on and we had some, you got to remember, we did that in 2015 and 16, but in 2017, we had record snowpack and record water. So we all looked great. Actually, we should have been giving God credit for it because we had all that snow that lasted over 2 years. And now we've got a more normal water pattern, and some years are wet and some years are dry. But this agreement over 4 years is going to be a better a better scenario about how we manage water. We want to maintain and restore the aquifer that so much of Idaho is dependent upon, and I've got great confidence. I really want to give kudos to the Lieutenant Governor Bedke and to Jeff Raybold, who's chairman of the water board. They did a lot of work, and Jamie in my office also. But those three, when I go to these water meetings, I would either go to the meeting or I'd call a lot of them. When I saw them last week, it was, I told you we'd get there, but it's, other states, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, California, they have not done the heavy work that we've done. And everybody's going to be looking at how we manage water in Idaho. There's only really two states in the West that manage what's under the ground with what's on top of the ground. Everybody's going to have to do that eventually, and they're going to look at our model. But it was those farmers rolling up their sleeves and getting together and coming up with a solution that is to be significantly praised for a resolution where Congress didn't intervene, a federal judge didn't intervene, which is what we worry about the most. And we came up with a sustainable solution for Idaho, and it's going to be good for everybody. It's going to be good for irrigators, it's going to be good for agriculture, it's going to be good for everybody that's dependent upon water, cities, wildlife interests. We were very pleased with it.
We did two things that don't happen very often in this political climate. Number one, a comprehensive agreement. Then number two, you gave credit to other people in the process. How did you manage to get people, different sides of the states with competing interests that had a lot more in common than separated them, to come together and to agree without digging in and just, Congress is a perfect example of what not to do in these situations.
Yeah, that's what whatever Congress does, do the opposite. But it was the order, which in fact the courts told the department they had to do. It was basically implementing the 2015-16 agreement, but that was the triggering event that got everybody together. We were pretty close in May at the water users, and then it kind of imploded. But what we would have had in May wasn't near as good as what we ended up with the end of November. And then I gave them a time frame, which they went over a little bit, but I'll tell you now, I didn't tell them. I fully expected them to go over, but it kept enough heat on the fire for them to work together. But, it's really important for communities, for farmers, for food processors to have certainty going forward. Now they have certainty.
Yeah, and this was probably what I imagine whether you admit it or not, a stressful time in the office because you have a rich history of ag. It's how you fed your family. It's how your parents and grandparents fed their families. You were elected with robust support of agriculture. And then you had a division of your friends and your family of agriculture, and you had to figure out a way to
my
get them together.
relatives, it was, but it ended up being, I've talked to a couple of the farmers that were very pivotal in the decision. And one of them said, "Oh, I knew we'd get there." I said, "Well, there are a couple times I didn't know whether we were going to get there or not, but it was really a good day for Idaho."
And so to our listeners who've, heard headlines here or there or a little bit, what are you hoping the average Idahoan takes away from this process?
Well, the best solution for Idaho, and it doesn't matter whether it's the administration of our precious water, whether it's what we do on wildfires, what we do on other things, we can come up with a better solution than particularly a federal judge, particularly Congress, and that's what happened.
Yeah. So Idaho solutions are the best solutions. So you brought up interior before. You just mentioned public lands. I think managing our aquifer and our water goes hand in hand with our public lands. When you look at an active fire year, when you look at what you have to be responsible for in a state that has immense public lands, is one of the reasons a lot of people choose to raise their families here. What causes you heartburn when it comes to managing the lands or dealing with the federal managers in the state?
I mean, dealing with the federal government is is always a little bit of a challenge. And most people in the United States don't realize how big the federal estate is in the West, and how we have to manage around. And some of it's the laws, but a lot of it's the way the laws are interpreted by, judicial decisions, by rules. But one of the things in the Western governors is that we all agree that we've got to do a better job of managing fires, particularly suppression early on. If we don't suppress these fires early on, then we won't have the resources to do the fire management we needed to do in late August and September. That's why when we had the fire in Stanley Basin near Redfish Lake, I was pretty adamant with the Forest Service. They need to put that fire out. They were inclined to say, well, we'll kind of manage it. I says, you let these fires get big in July, and then it costs the federal government a fortune. It's terrible for air quality for not only Idaho, but all the states downstream from us that get our smoke. And, we do so many things for air quality. One of the things we can do is a better job of managing the forests. Our state lands, because we have them managed, and we jump on those fires right away. And we're trying to encourage the federal government to look at the model that the states use in fire suppression and fire management.
And when we look to solutions on federal land, a great example pops up of, well, great, might not be the right word, Lava Ridge Wind Project comes up. That's one that's been talked about over and over again, and probably a prime example of when they've looked at a federal solution rather than taking any Idaho consideration in mind. You've been pretty vocal about your opposition to that, and it's because you've talked to stakeholders. What do you foresee happens with that project?
Well, it's a good example of what happens when somebody along the Potomac River tells people along the Snake River how to manage their resources, and without getting input, without getting buy-in. There are going to be wind projects that are going to go in the state of Idaho, but you don't do anything the magnitude of that, surrounded by, whether it's the view shed, whether it's, obviously the hunt camp, Minidoka Hunt Camp was impacted. There were a lot of things that were impacted, but it's just, you do these things at the federal level without getting input. We wanted to send a message, and fortunately, we've got Congressman Simpson. We've got both senators that are helping with that going forward. So there's a record of decision that's yet to come, but I am confident that. But that still means we need to be on our toes until we see the final outcome. But I've got pretty good confidence that the right thing will be done there.
It was shocking to see how vocal the leaders of Idaho were, and how it appeared as if they were being ignored at the Department of Interior. How much confidence do you have in, now that you have a new friend, presumably?
Oh, it'll be way better.
Yeah. A direct line in,
Yeah.
you can help out there.
It'll be way better.
I love that. So when you think about the day comes where Governor Little's not in office 40, 50, 60 years down the road, there's a lot of things that the history books are probably going to say. And I think there's some unique things that we can look at. So you were a governor who made historic investments in education, which alone's impressive, but you did it at the same time by making historic tax cuts. As you talk to other governors in other states who have not managed to find a balance between those two types of things, what makes Idaho so unique in that we can cut taxes while still making necessary investments?
Well, I think a lot of it is just in the DNA of Idahoans. You ask 100 Idahoans, do they think you should spend money you don't have? You should, if you've got, good surpluses like we did, that you invest in water, you invest in roads, you invest, and then you don't build the size of government to where you're in a trap when things normalize. And I know some of my fellow governors saw that federal money and build up government programs, and we didn't. And I tell people all the time, I don't know what's going to happen to the international economy, the national economy, even the regional economy, but you're going to be better off in Idaho than you are in any other state, just because we do what's um, in the DNA of Idaho, and you just don't take that easy money and build a program and then not be able to pay for it when things normalize.
Yeah. And a big part of something you've pushed is, I think when you first were running for governor, you kind of said your decision making will be through the lens of, I want an Idaho that my kids will be able to raise their grandkids here, and my grandkids will be able to raise my great grandkids here. And a lot of that is formulated around economic development, and education's a key point of that. Is that still the family a lens for which you make
Well,
decisions?
it's still the same lens. We use the same lens. But when I first became lieutenant governor, we had 10% of our workforce that was out of work. We had 100,000 people out of. There were no bad jobs. We have a much better position now. Now we can add quality jobs, increase personal income, more higher skilled jobs. That's why we're doing what we're doing in the workforce area, so that that our kids have better opportunities going forward. And literally, when we get this training program on full stride, to where whether it's building houses and having plumbers, electricians, contractors, whether it's healthcare, to where we need more nurses, in every one of those fields, we're going to be better off. And so many kids just didn't have an opportunity to go on. Now they all have a chance to go on and basically skill up to where they can make a better living than they were before.
Well, I think it's an important point because you talk about CTE, you talk about workforce training, and you beat that drum very, very loud, but you sit in a little bit different seat than the average Idahoan, in that you speak to employers far more often than a lot of us do. And so you're hearing them beat the drum to you, saying, this is what we need. And as a result, I'm assuming that's why you've been so loud about it.
I mean, if you're a eighth grader,
Mm-hmm.
and you're eighth and ninth grade, you're trying to decide what's going on. Now that you're going to have an opportunity, that 80% of them are going to have an opportunity to go on, compared to 35% before. And when I say go on, that's get certified as a welder or a lineman or a nurse practitioner. Those are all jobs that are going to help the state, and they're going to help those kids at the same time.
Well, and the education in Idaho is almost unrecognizable from when you started, for the better. When you look at everything from teacher pay and their health insurance plans to even Vandal and BSU football, right? I know you're not going to try to take credit for any of that, but a lot of investments have been made on the education front, but a lot of good things are happening
Well,
in Idaho.
there really are, and it's those things. You take a high school kid that's gonna get, whether it's 8 months of training or 2 years of training or 4 years or more, they're going to have a higher level of financial security going forward. And then they're going to, start families and look forward to building, having their own home, stay here in Idaho. What it took to get kids to stay here before is different today. We absolutely have to preserve the quality of life. Outdoor recreation, better jobs, new support small businesses that are just getting started with the critical workforce they need. So, I'm very pleased with that, but we still got more work to do.
Yeah, you've always had the approach of, you don't rest too long after a big victory. You saw what happened with, getting this water deal done, and all these investments we've made, but you've got a lot more on your to-do list. We don't need to get into details, but it's safe to say that looking forward, there's a lot more things that we can expect to see coming from the
But
governor.
it all goes back to that. Our kids and our grandkids having the opportunity to stay here. And so sometimes they don't want to be stuck in traffic. They want to have better jobs. They want to have better outdoor opportunities. Those are all things that are going to create the bait to have our kids stay here, and those that left come back.
Yeah. You're around people all day who respect the office of governor, that show a lot of deference. When you're around the grandkids, is it kind of humbling? Does grandpa look a little different than governor?
Not really. Not really.
Is that your favorite title to have, is grandpa?
Oh, absolutely. But it's, and they're I'm very pleased. I got some of my grandkids that are in charter schools, and some of them are in public schools. And as I spend time with them, I'm very pleased with where they are. But we need to make that opportunity available to all Idahoans.
You've got a unique heritage in Idaho. Grandfather immigrated from Scotland as a shepherd and sheep herder and came over here. When tough decisions come across your desk, do you think back to your dad, who was a state senator, and think, man, how would dad have handled this issue with these farmers disagreeing in these waters? Do you think back to grandpa and how he would have handled some of these tough problems?
Well, but Idaho's a rapidly changing state. We were traditionally, mining, logging, agriculture, food processing, and now we've got all those new industries that are growing, and little businesses all over Idaho that, I always look at Treasure Valley uh, and look at the great companies that were here, and every one of them started with an Idahoan. Jack Simplot, Joe Albertson, Harry Morrison, uh, they were all Idahoans that they didn't get a government handout. They started out, and that's why deregulation is a big deal for me, because I want those small entrepreneurs to be successful. That they don't need a lawyer and a regulatory person. That the rules are pretty clear. We always want to keep our workforce and our residents safe, but then we want to have the maximum opportunity for bright Idaho entrepreneurs to do something that's never been done before, that will create more economic opportunity in Idaho.
When I think that deregulation is what allows you to do what some of your other neighboring states can't, is the ability to get government out of the way. And you often talk about, government can't operate at the speed of business, but
Well,
as close as possible.
It's advantageous that our three neighbors to the west of us make life harder for their citizens, and that's why there's so many people moving into Idaho. I say it's a cow problem, growth, California, Oregon, and Washington, and I see those people all the time. They move here, and state, it's so much better here than it is over there. And it's not that I'm wake up every morning trying to compete with them. I just do what I think Idaho people expect me to do and is the right thing. And as a result, we have all these people that move here to have that opportunity for themselves and their families.
Yeah, I love it. We know you got a lot on your schedule, but before we let you go, there's a tradition on the podcast where we ask two of the toughest questions. And if your staff's been good, they may have given you a hint and prepared you. So the first question, you've been all throughout Idaho. Safe to say probably nearly every city in Idaho you've spent time in. As you've traveled around and grabbed a bite to eat, is there a place somewhere in the state that you can think that's where everybody needs to stop and grab a bite to eat? And I'm gonna preface by saying you can't say Teresa's Cooking. That one is off limits and not fair, so cross that off the list. But if you were to pick a restaurant in the Gem State that you think's fantastic and you'd recommend, what would it be?
Well, I have consumed great nutritional substance all over the state of Idaho. Probably one of my favorite places is Hudson's Hamburgers in Coeur d'Alene, because it's just a multi-generational family hamburger place that just, and they're I think a third generation. They're doing a good job, and but Saturday is Small Business Saturday in Idaho, and it's these small unique restaurants that are unique to those areas, that are speak to the culture in Idaho.
Yeah, Hudson's Hamburgers in Coeur d'Alene. We'll keep track of that one. We know how important literacy is to both you and your wife. It's something that you've made a priority. As you think about books that you've read in your life that have changed your philosophies and your visions or the way you've treated other people, what's a book that you think everyone out there ought to crack open at some point?
There's quite a few of them, but right now I'm reading kind of the life history of Winston Churchill, which is pretty fascinating. There's leadership books. This is biography that that I wasn't as familiar with. And, and you look at the challenges Churchill had at his time, and, what we don't look back at, the Civil War, World War II, the First World War, and we should be so grateful for what we have here because of what other people did in front of us. And I know I won't make any kind of a mark relative to that, but it's having to make hard decisions at the right time. And whether, you kind of instinctively know where your constituency is, but once in a while you just got to make a hard decision because it's the right thing to do. I don't have anything like World War II that I have to deal with, and I'm very thankful for that.
I'm sure at times it feels like World War II around here, though.
Oh, no, 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 no. Well, but that's good to read those because then when you come home and you think, oh man, that health and welfare budget or that education budget or something, uh, we we should be very thankful for the challenges we have relative. There was a time during the Depression here in Idaho, we couldn't pay the state's bills. There was a time that was very, very, very. But of course, so was the rest of the country. But our predecessors, Dad was chairman of the finance committee. Their hard decisions at that point in time, telling people no, and keeping government to a limited basis is why I have the incredible opportunity to do big things going forward.
It sounds like you consider yourself an optimist.
Oh yeah, always.
So we know we've got listeners out there who they've got their challenges. Some of them might be financial. Some of them, families are struggling, whatever it may be. As we look towards the holidays and a new year ahead, what message do you have for Idahoans?
Well, I do think as we're approaching Thanksgiving and Christmas, remembering the rest of the people in your community. I was at an event Friday, I guess it was the giving event, and I tell them that I compete with Utah about the highest percent of individual giving in the state, and Utah's 1 and we're 2, and I'm trying to get us up because those helping your community, government cannot and should not do everything. And so, but like I say, if people have better jobs, better opportunities, they're going to be able to decide how they take their money and give it to their neighbors and love their neighbors. And that makes everything else we do easy. Is that somebody will say, well, we ought to do this. So, that community can kind of, but there are some communities where it's a problem, but it used to be, I would tell you, if somebody said, I need to hire 20 people or 40 people or whatever where do I go? We have the incredible situation where there is no one place in Idaho. Some of it's remote work. Some of it's obviously our internet connectivity. But there is not a community in Idaho that's, really challenged. The mining communities and the timber communities, because there have been a big consolidation of sawmills, but we still produce the same amount of wood fibers we ever did with less than probably about a quarter of the number of mills. Mining, we're going to be much more specialized going forward. Obviously, strategic minerals is going to be important for all the things we need in this world. We have the most modern food processing facilities in the world here because Idaho's a long way from the global markets. So we have to do it better, more efficiently, have a higher quality product. I just was on a trade mission in both Taiwan and Japan, and they're very interested in our products. And we have to make great products here to basically keep our agricultural communities going. So we just got lots of opportunities I'm very excited about.
I love it. I love the message. Well, Governor, we appreciate your leadership, both in economic development and education, but most recently, thanks for what you're doing in the water. Farmers around the state are very happy.
Well, I can say we got her done, but we also put in places if we have a record 2 or 3 year drought, we also kind of have a system in place to where we can deal with it with more certainty, and hopefully, and I believe they will, farmers will start dealing with a crisis prior to the crisis getting there, and that was part of it, and that's very important.
Yeah. We're cheering for you.
All
Let
right.
us know how we can help. Thank you for your
Okay,
time
thanks.
today. Appreciate you.